This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Madeline, host of Crowned and Dangerous here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come back to check out my show, Crowned and Dangerous, where Jessica and I talk about our time in the pageant world. A new show comes out bi-weekly on Thursdays. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Crowned and Dangerous. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. I'm Emily, and we're going to talk to you today about some page-to-screen adaptations. We've done a little bit of this before with books to movies and books to shows, and today we are going to specifically focus on comics to cartoons. It's something I'm not personally super duper familiar with, but we have our resident comic expert Elisabeth here, so we're going to dive into that. But first, Lindsay would like to share with you something we're going to be starting next week with our next episode, and we're really, really excited to be doing this.
Hey there, it's Lindsay from Beauties and Headcanons by Public House Media. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have some exciting news that the ladies and I have decided on for this amazing nerdy podcast we've been bringing to you for almost 100 episodes. As we near that number, we decided to change things up a little bit and begin honing each of our own individual strengths and interests by having a segment of our own to interrupt the greater podcast going forward. So I guess you should get used to this. Each of us want to make something that we can get even more excited about in addition to what we already nerd out about in the episode. So Emily has decided she wants to kind of find the science behind the things we talk about. She was a science teacher after all, and so she's going to have her own little corner to speak on them. Also, Elisabeth is going to have a little bit of gaming technology, updates that she wants to speak about with the games she's playing, opinions on what's out there in the market right now. And I, of course, want to stay connected to geeky culture and want to work on networking and the sociology of geeks. So I'm going to be looking at the fandoms, the cons I'm going to, cosplays I want to create, all those things that you're used to coming from me, but in my own little place to nerd out about those. So we are also still working on keeping nerd news a part of our episodes and would love your feedback on what you'd like for us to cover. Anything you'd like to tell us about what we're doing well, what we can keep bringing to the platform to stay interesting. And we also want to thank our Public House Media editor, Vic, for making us sound great in the past, for his continued devotion to create a seamless listening experience for you. And, because this is going to be a fun new endeavor for all of us. So we also want to thank you for listening, for giving us feedback, and for sticking with us through all of the adjustments and exciting changes we're about to make. So thanks for staying nerdy with us.
And if you guys have any suggestions or ideas on the segments, we would be totally happy to hear you out on that, because we're just starting this and we're totally down for changing things up if we need to, because this show is about what you guys want to listen to. It's a little bit about what we want to talk about, but it's also about what you guys want to listen to. So we're working together on this. But with that, let's hop into these comics that have been turned into cartoons, because I love me some good cartoons.
Of course, who doesn't love a good cartoon? When I was thinking of the different adaptations, when we were talking about this episode, really honestly, most of what I could come up with was DC. I mean, I tried to give it a little bit more variety, but Marvel is not always so good.
Yeah.
in their animation.
I've seen some, but I'm not sure how
Yeah.
well it follows any kind of comic storylines or anything like that. So
Yeah, so
yeah.
And I mean, aside from Marvel and DC, really there's only one other independent, I guess you could say, adaptation out there, and that's Spawn. Spawn was originally created by Todd McFarlane. He is not in the DC or Marvel universe. Todd is very, very protective of Spawn, and he is not selling him off to DC or Marvel or anything like that. So he's always been very, wanting to be in this creative control for his own character. And Spawn did get a live action movie back in 97 or 98. Does that sound right?
Okay.
That
I
sounds
looked
about
it up,
right.
actually. It was 97.
97. I knew it was around the time of Steel and Blade, so
Okay.
which Steel was also not good, but Blade was excellent. So I mean, one out of three black superheroes, I guess, that's cool. But he did have an HBO cartoon adaptation, which I mean, obviously, that's a more adult natured
Yeah.
show. But I mean, it's a more adult oriented comic, so it really fits the whole atmosphere and the whole vibe of the comic. And Todd also, obviously had control of the cartoon as well, so he was able to faithfully adapt, a lot of the different storylines and the themes into the cartoon. So, not exactly something that you would want to show your kids, but maybe, once your kids go to bed, you want to relax with a little bit more mature cartoon, Spawn is definitely one to go to.
All right. Good to know. Well, and I sort of feel like cartoons are a really easy transition from comics because they're already basically a cartoon. You just need to fill in the gaps and then actually make the audio tracks for it, and then you have a cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very similar medium. I mean, it's still different, but it's like hedging the line into that similar medium where you have the story writing and you also have the visuals right there with you. So, it's I mean, it's really like a no-brainer, really.
Exactly. Like, we want to make this more appealing to a different audience. Let's make a cartoon out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. First step. It's easy. So a lot of these that Elisabeth has a great list here. I've heard of some of them, like from when I was growing up in the 90s, and there were some great cartoons coming out from, I guess, like you said, specifically from DC. And I remember seeing some of those, and I'm like, oh, that might be cool to watch. But I was like, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. So I never did, and now I kind of regret not watching them.
Yeah. And I mean, possibly one of like the biggest cartoon adaptations. I mean, really one of the biggest superhero cartoons in the 90s, other than Batman the Animated Series. Because I feel like I talk about that so much.
You kind of do, but I'm sure it's with good reason.
Yes, it really is. But another one is the original X-Men the Animated Series. There have been like several different X-Men cartoons, but the very first one, they adapted several storylines, including the Phoenix storyline, not the Dark Phoenix, but the Phoenix storyline, and it was absolutely amazing to like just sit there and watch on screen like this whole build up and payoff that was actually satisfying. And you go from that to like looking at the movies, and it's like, nah, I think I'd rather stick with this.
Wow. Well, and I mean, to a certain extent, there's certain things that have to be done with movies, that you can't fit into a movie. And you can do a lot more with the storyline if it's a series or a, like a show.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, shows definitely have a lot more freedom when it comes to the longer arcs like that.
Yeah.
But even just the writing and everything was just so spot on. There were so many times where it's just like you could get like chills just watching a cartoon.
That's
it's like,
awesome.
It's like, who does this? Oh, good writers do this. This is what good writers can do.
Ah, that's awesome. That's really cool. All right, so some of these other ones we have, because you noted some of these as like some of the best, or some of them are like the essentials.
Yes, definitely.
So like Batman Under the Red Hood.
Oh yes.
And Batman versus TMNT, which recently came out as a movie.
Yes.
You said, right?
Yes, it was just recently released for digitally.
Okay.
I mean, most of these things, most if not all of these, didn't get a theatrical release. They're only released like basically direct to video. But Batman versus TMNT was just released, and I just saw it, and it is so awesome. Like it has every single thing that you would want from the little comic arc with Batman and the Turtles.
That's awesome.
I mean, the whole thing is like, Shredder and Ra's al Ghul are working together to, achieve a goal, and part of the whole thing is they're fusing the ooze, which is what turned the turtles into the turtles and, makes them who they are. They're fusing it and making it a little different, and they're giving it to different people, and notably the people in Arkham. And so you get all of these really cool hybrids of, like, Harley is like this hyena dog, and Joker is this snake, and Mr. Freeze is a polar bear, and
cool.
Like, yeah, it's just all these different characters, and it's like thinking of, just talking about it, it's like, oh, that sounds really weird and kooky, but like reading it or seeing it on the screen, it's like, okay, yeah, that actually does work.
Yeah. Know? That sounds cool. And I've always been interested in the turtles. I just have, like I said, I just never actually got myself to get into them. And I think that's a really cool kind of crossover with Batman and the Turtles, to have both of those well-known characters, I guess both of those like storylines kind of crossing.
Yeah, because Batman is typically portrayed as just, this kind of dark, brooding, no fun kind of character. And then, obviously the Turtles are, mostly lighthearted and want to have fun and
right.
everything.
Well, they're
like
teenagers.
So,
yeah, they're teenagers. So, they're just like, let's eat some pizza and have a good time, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so it creates that interesting dynamic between them. So I really enjoyed it. So definitely check that out. It was just released, so nice. It should be available like pretty much like anywhere you'd want to find it, I would think.
Do a Google search.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So what else do we have then? So your top recommendations.
My number one always will be Batman Under the Red Hood. Now, this concerns Jason Todd, who is Batman's second Robin, who was initially killed off in the 80s in the comics. And he was resurrected and reintroduced. He was kind of foreshadowed in the storyline Hush. But he was fully brought back in the Under the Hood arc, where he comes back as the anti-hero, the Red Hood. And in the cartoon adaptation, Jason is portrayed by Jensen Ackles, who some may know as Dean from Supernatural. Yeah, he does a really great job. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have initially thought of him as doing voice work for Jason, but like you hear it and you hear his his acting chops through that, and it's like, yeah, you know what, this really works for me. So now, just like I can't really hear anybody but Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill when it comes to Batman and the Joker, I can't really hear anybody but Jensen Ackles when it comes to Jason Todd. I just it's not happening.
That's funny. So I've seen a lot of people clamoring for a Jensen Ackles Red Hood show, like a live action show, and I'm like, why? I mean, it's kind of a random thing, but now it makes sense because he was the voice in the show, and now that Supernatural is going to be wrapping up, he's a little bit more free and available. So
yeah, and then people want to disparage him because of his age. It's like, look, you got 30-year-olds on the Disney Channel playing teenagers. Right. I don't want to hear anything.
Right, come on now.
Age doesn't mean anything in Hollywood. You can play whatever it is you want to play. I mean, look at Maisie Williams. She's like, what, 21 years old? And she's still, I mean, obviously in the show she's still 18, but like, I mean, she still looks like she's like 12. Maybe
right, exactly. Like, no, she looks very young, and a lot of it goes into your look and your vocal qualities and how you act. And if you can act the right way and have the right look, you can do it.
Yeah, and what I thought was really interesting about Under the Red Hood, what the cartoon adaptation was, I mean, obviously, there is a bit of a niche market for cartoon adaptations, and especially since they don't receive a theatrical release, they're, as far as the money that they get back, it's obviously they want it to be, they want to make their budget back. But right. Under the Red Hood made over $10 million.
Wow. Like, that's pretty good for a cartoon.
For a cartoon that was not released theatrically.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
That, I mean, to me, that should, if anything, should tell you about the quality, because when it comes to cartoon adaptations like these, the big thing is word of mouth. Comic fans will let you know if this is good or not. And if it's not good, they're going to tell you don't buy it. But if it is good, we're going to tell you, look, you got to check this out. And this is one you definitely got to check out.
Nice. Yeah. So we've also got some things on your list here, like the Killing Joke, which you say
Mm-hmm.
is very dark. I honestly haven't
Yes.
heard of it. Is it related to some heroes or villains that we know?
Yes, it involves Batman and the Joker. And this is, I think I mentioned before where the Joker has kind of a nebulous background, where,
Yeah,
like, every time he retells his origin story, it's a little bit different. There's something
right.
different about it. And this, however, the Killing Joke has my favorite background for him. And it's the concept that really one bad day can make somebody snap. And it kind of, the the cartoon and the comic kind of follow two dual storylines that are going on, which is like the present day and then the past with the Joker and how he became the Joker. And in the past, it follows him as he is, a working man trying to provide for his wife, for his pregnant wife, and he's just having such a hard time finding work. He gets desperate and he falls in with some gangsters, and they try to take him out on this job, and he doesn't really want to do this, but he has to do this to provide for his wife and child, so he agrees to it. And obviously, stuff goes wrong, and he gets hit with a lot of blame for it. And he goes back and he's like, I really just, I want to just cut ties with this. And he said, well, it's too late. You got to keep, you got to keep your promises. And they threaten his pregnant wife. And, so he keeps his promises, but his pregnant wife ends up dying anyway.
Oh.
And so it's like, basically it's just one thing right after another, and he just snaps. And so that's how he becomes the Joker, where, he's lost everything. And so now he doesn't care. And now he's just this psychopathic maniac. And maybe not always psychologically correct, but I just found the whole concept from his mind very interesting, is that's what he sees himself as. As he sees himself as this really ordinary everyday man that has just experienced a lot of trauma,
Right.
So that's how he sees himself, and that's why I find it interesting. But it follows along in the present day, where the Joker injures Barbara Gordon really, really badly. Like, he is the lead to her paralysis, which is how she becomes Oracle. And he kidnaps Jim Gordon, and he basically is trying to put him through the same things that he went through in order to try to get him to snap.
Okay.
And the ending of the Killing Joke is supposed to be very vague. It ends off with the Joker telling Batman a joke, and they actually both start to laugh, and then in the last panel, there's only one person laughing, and it's kind of ambiguous. It's like
who is it?
Yeah, is the Joker still laughing?
Oh.
Is it Batman laughing? Did Batman kill the Joker?
What's happening?
Yeah.
Oh.
The whole premise is, that Joker was right in that he did cause somebody to snap, but it wasn't Jim Gordon, it was Batman that he caused to snap. So yeah, it's a very, very dark concept, very dark material, but the comic is really very good. And the cartoon itself, the first part has a bit of a kind of tacked on story about Barbara Gordon kind of trying to establish a tie between her and Batman and their relationship.
Okay.
And I know some fans didn't really like that. I didn't really mind it, but they used that in order to establish the relationship between Barbara and Batman and her kind of role in everything. And then they kind of proceeded with the Killing Joke storyline, where Joker shoots Barbara, she becomes paralyzed, and Jim is kidnapped and everything.
Gotcha.
And then it just goes from there.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Being called the Killing Joke, it does sound very dark.
Yeah.
But also very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go through what else. I'll let you kind of take it and at your own pace.
Just so we don't stick in DC for too much.
Yeah.
There's the Hulk versus movie, which there's the movie actually consists of two different storylines of Hulk versus Thor and Hulk versus Wolverine. And it basically is just these two different situations that Hulk is put in, where he's fighting Thor and then when he's fighting Wolverine. The first part with Thor, is actually not my favorite, even though it features Loki, and I absolutely love Loki.
Yes.
But
Well.
well, yeah, I mean, Loki can't make up for everything. It's still
True.
interesting, but like to me, the one with him versus Wolverine is even better because you not only get Wolverine, you get Deadpool, you get Lady Deathstrike. I mean, you get like the
Man.
whole, yeah, you get like a bunch of different characters that actually start fighting in this whole battle, and then Hulk and Wolverine start going at it. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've always thought it was the better one just because, Deadpool always provides the more entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, regardless, I mean, it's still a really good little adaptation from the comic to the cartoon screen, I guess you could
Right.
say.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also kind of funny because it's like Hulk, which we normally think of as one of the heroes, one of the Avengers, against other heroes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the different like situations that come up that actually pit him against those different heroes. Because it's not just like they're not just like thrown together and said, "Oh, you got to fight." They are put in situations where Hulk believes he needs to fight. And he
Okay.
needs to fight them specifically.
Yeah. Which makes for the story to be more interesting rather than like, oh, we're just gonna blindly fight each other because we're here.
Yeah. Yeah, I have, I do dislike, stories that come up that are basically like that because it's like, well, what is the sense in that? Why would these people be fighting? But, this, presents a logical, reasonable explanation as to why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense then. Okay. Lots of other things.
One of my other favorite ones, I would say probably my number 2 recommendation, is The Dark Knight Returns. It is a 2-parter, and it is well worth it. Now, instead of the kind of normal people that we have voicing Batman, because besides Kevin Conroy, there is like a little roster of a couple of different people that will come in and voice him. But this time we get Peter Weller, who some may recognize as the original RoboCop.
Okay, I don't, but okay.
Oh, and he is absolutely fantastic. His voice is so perfect for an older Bruce Wayne because this takes place like years in the future, where it's kind of like with the whole Civil War thing in Marvel, where superheroes have to be registered and they have to fight for the government, or else they can't be superheroes anymore. And Superman is one of the heroes that is registered. But Batman did not. And so Bruce Wayne has kind of given up the mantle of Batman, and Gotham has just fallen into chaos because he can't do anything about it as Batman. Mm-hmm. And he finally, gets to the point where he's like, nope, I can't just stand by anymore. I have to do something. And he's much older at this point, but he's spurred on by the person who becomes my absolute favorite Robin ever. Her name is Carrie Kelly, and she is just so spunky and adorable and lovable. Ooh. And she is just so awesome. Like, she is like the whole like highlight of this. Besides Peter Weller as Batman, she is like my favorite part of The Dark Knight Returns.
That's awesome.
Yes. And there's a lot of like little kind of heartwarming moments between them because, Bruce is like, he's obviously had Robins before and he doesn't want to get too attached, but obviously he gets attached to her. And there's lots of great little moments between them in the fights that they have, and then what Batman does to kind of unite the people against the bad guys and everything. Yeah. And then obviously, since he's doing all this work, they call in Superman to try to fight him, and so then they have the whole fight of Superman versus Batman, and it's just so great. It's one of Frank Miller's really good works. Frank Miller, to me, kind of, he goes up and he goes down. He has some good stuff. He has some not so good stuff. But I think this is definitely one of his better ones that he's done. And so this is like probably like my number 2 recommendation out of everything.
Nice. Yeah, that does sound really good. You said that was 2-part movies, right?
Yeah, it was a 2-parter.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And all right, what else do we have as your like essentials of the best of the best?
I would say Avengers Assemble. I know I've mentioned this before on the show. We haven't really talked about it a whole lot in depth, but it is, for like a Marvel animated product, it is probably the best that I've seen. It portrays all of the characters very faithfully to the comics. It adapts several different comic arcs into it. And then the way it incorporates other characters later on, because, I mean, obviously they have the core of the Avengers, the Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Hawkeye, all of them. They have all of them as the core, but then, like, later on, obviously they want to bring in other superheroes, and then the way they bring those in is just so fantastic how, they aren't seen as secondary. They're seen as Avengers in their own right. And even after, the original Avengers come back and, kind of take their positions again, like, it's still, like, basically they incorporate everybody.
Nice, yeah.
And, I mean, they did an Infinity Stone arc
as
well.
Cool.
Yeah, so, I mean, and honestly, that one was far better written than the whole MCU did. Maybe they should have hired the writers for this, because I mean, honestly, like, as far as, like, the action went, it wasn't anything, like, over the top that, like, they couldn't have been able to do in the movies. I mean, considering everything they did do in the movies, but, it's just the way it was written and the way it played out, it was just so much better. So much better. The stakes and everything that they were fighting for, it felt like a lot higher even than the movies
wow.
did. And, like, everything that they were doing, like, even in the middle of the fight was just, like, okay, well, they gain a little bit of ground. Oh, but then they're losing a little bit of ground. Like, it was a lot more, like, it was a lot more give and take than Thanos just, coming in and stomping everything,
Sure, yeah. Yeah, because that's kind of what I felt like happened. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's, to me, the most effective battles are ones where you can see where the heroes have chances to kind of advance and take advantage of certain situations, and they do, and maybe that helps them, or maybe that actually it turns out to hinder them. You never really know. It's just this constant struggle of back and forth of, oh, this is helping, or oh, this didn't really help. Like,
right.
It's always up in the air, as opposed to somebody just coming in and just laying it down, and that's that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that sounds way way more like you said, a higher stakes.
Yeah, because you actually get this glimpse of, oh, we're winning, and then, oh, we're not.
Right. All right, so any final additions to your essentials list? I have a couple of mentions that didn't make there was some attempts at making a comic to cartoon transition that I know about, but not being a comic reader myself, I'm not 100% like sure about them. So I'll let you finish up with your high rated suggestions first.
Honestly, I would probably go with Justice League Dark. It's very different. In that it features a lot of lesser shown characters. I won't say lesser known characters, because Zatanna and John Constantine are pretty major characters. I think pretty well known characters, at least I would think so. But they aren't like Batman and Superman. They aren't shown as much. And so Justice League Dark was a chance for them to really, like, step out of the whole Superman and Batman shadow and kind of shine on their own. And it involves a lot more like supernatural and mysticism and magic and things like that, because I mean, obviously with Zatanna and John Constantine, but I love these looks that we get to have into the heroes that aren't the major heroes that we just see all the time.
I think it seems refreshing to see people that are part of the storyline, part of the world, but they're not the same, like, five that we always get to see.
Exactly. So this gives them a chance to really stand out and have their own story separate from the major players.
Yeah. Well, that sounds cool, though. So it's called Justice League Dark. Does that mean that there's like like the characters act darker? Is it darker
No.
story, or is it just to separate it from the regular?
I think it's called Justice League Dark. I mean, don't quote me on this, but I think it's called that just because it involves a lot of the magic and mysticism and a lot of like the darker elements of the universe. Because magic isn't necessarily something that's discussed a whole lot in DC.
Sure.
You know, it's DC tends to be a lot more reality based, and so the magic isn't always necessarily looked at or recognized, and so. But, I mean, at the same time, like, it can still contain a lot of very strong and powerful villains that you can come up against. So,
yeah,
you know, I kind of like the title, Justice League Dark.
Yeah, I think that I that's a good explanation, I think. Because you're right, a lot of the heroes especially are just people. I mean, especially except for like Superman and stuff, because they already have powers, but they don't follow like magic where they have to like conjure things or that sort of stuff. So, yeah. Cool. All right. So those are her top recommendations, which are excellent. I understand from the perspective of a non-comic reader that I don't have the best the best credentials for this, but I enjoy watching Teen Titans Go just for the entertainment value. I understand also that there was another series called Teen Titans that was probably a little bit better and more attuned to the comic versions, because basically Teen Titans Go is just 5 heroic people acting crazy and fun and doing stuff together, and the backdrop happens to be that it's the Teen Titans doing those things. It honestly really could just be any characters though doing whatever the heck they're doing, because they have whole episodes about whether a burger or a burrito is better.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that's my whole issue with it is that, you know, it's just dumbing down cartoons more, and I don't think cartoons necessarily need to be dumbed down. I mean, sure, the fun ones are fun, but something like Teen Titans already had an actual like serious cartoon going that was really, really good that people enjoyed, and I guess Cartoon Network was like, we don't like that. I think, you know, we think cartoons need to be dumbed down for kids, so we're not going to do that anymore. So, yeah.
So I'm actually really bummed because I'm really bummed now that I haven't actually seen Teen Titans, and now all I have is Teen Titans Go, which is really fun. But I would love to learn more about the Teen Titans as actual Teen Titans and the stories and the arcs behind them and everything like that. Because we've got Robin, Starfire, Raven, Cyborg, and Beast Boy, which are really interesting characters because they all come from such different backgrounds, but I don't know what their backgrounds are.
Yeah, and see, the original ones covered their backgrounds really, really well, and they went up a lot of times against Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke. And so there was a lot of tension with that, and there was a lot, like, Robin had personal history with him. And there was a lot of playing on that, and it was just great. It was so amazing and fantastic to see this, you know, portrayed on the screen.
And so I tried to look for the Teen Titans original cartoon series, and I'm like, where in the world can I watch this? It's not on Amazon Prime, it's not on Hulu, it's not on Netflix. I'm like, really? Come on, people!
We gotta scrub it.
No, don't scrub it! We don't know. That's not what we need. Like, Teen Titans Go can still exist while Teen Titans exists. You don't have to replace it.
No, we gotta scrub it. We gotta scrub it.
No, that's not how to make things better.
Yeah, we don't want to make things better. We want to make money.
No. All right, and then so I guess maybe this. I have younger kids, like my oldest is 5, and then we have 2 younger ones. And so, like, Teen Titans Go is just something fun we can have on while they're playing, or if they actually want to pay attention, they can, or whatever. So another thing that we've put on is, I think it was on Hulu, I want to say, is DC's Superhero Girls. It basically is like teenage versions of the female DC heroes. They're all like best friends at a high school together. So it's kind of like My Little Pony, but with DC superheroes in a way. But it's a little bit more serious because they are actually fighting the villains of DC to a certain extent, and there's certain storylines. But it's again, it's kind of like, okay, this has been done before. It's just with a different backdrop.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to it was a series, I think it was called X-Men Evolution, where basically like most of the X-Men were made into teenagers and put in high school. Which was interesting, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, just knowing how the X-Men were formed, it seems like they wouldn't have all been at the same age in high school together.
Definitely not. But,
so that's weird in and of itself.
In the world of fan fiction, we call that an AU, or an alternate universe.
Sure.
So,
yeah, that sounds like the superhero girls, DC superhero girls, is what they've done there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it seems like it's kind of what they did, and I mean, it's entertainment. It doesn't. I don't think that it specifically follows any comic arcs, which is why I wish they didn't. But at the same time, I wish they like took the same idea and did it better. I don't know.
That would require thought. We don't do thought here.
Thought. Thinking is overrated? No.
Yes.
Come on now. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents. It's like, okay, so I know about these shows that are out now. But now I totally wish that I had watched some of these other shows earlier, like when they were out in the 90s or following. Like, I think Teen Titans, the cartoon, was out in the early 2000s. Like, that would have been great, because I was like a preteen teenage at the time. That would have been perfect.
Oh, you probably would have really liked it.
Yeah, I probably would have loved it.
You probably would have loved Starfire.
Yes, I already love Starfire. I also love Raven, just because she's so like dry.
And she is also voiced by Tara Strong, who also does.
Oh yes, she does Twilight Sparkle.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. See, I know all the ponies.
Yep, and so it all comes full circle.
It does. Wow. Oh my goodness. Now I need to find it. All right. Well, thank you all for getting nerdy with us today. We are definitely looking forward to next week with our new segments coming out. So please definitely look for next week's episode as well. And as part of the segments, we will have like a regular topic, but we will have segments that each of us are going to do, and we're so very excited. Also, look for more social media posts from us, because we're going to be kind of revamping how we do all of that. So we will be hopefully seeing a lot. You will see a lot more of us, and hopefully we will see a lot more of you on the internet, which will be wonderful.
Yes, definitely.
All right, and with that, I am Emily.
And I'm Elisabeth, and thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.